Today's section is on two-step equations. The only difference between this and the previous stuff is that there's an extra step. So, for number 1, we are going to solve. And one key thing to remember on this type of equations is when you are solving, you're going to first look at the variable. Our goal is to get that x by itself. So when we get that x by itself, the best way to start it off is to look at it and say, okay, which is the furthest away from the x, but on the same side of it, of the equal sign. So you'll notice that this minus 3 is further away from the x than the 4, so that means that we're going to get rid of the minus 3 first. So we're going to start by adding 3 to both sides. When you do that, you are left with x over 4 on the left side. You get 5 on the right side. Minus 3 plus 3 is 0, so if you want, you can cancel them out. So then we have x over 4 equals 5. Remember that x over 4 means x divided by 4, so in order to get rid of dividing by 4, we need to multiply both sides by 4. So on your left-hand side, you will end up being left with just plain old x. The right-hand side, you get 20. That is your answer. Once again, as in the previous section, if you'd like to check your work, which I highly recommend, especially if you're on a test or a quiz, you will do 20 divided by 4 minus 3 equals 2. You substitute that answer in for the x. We know that 20 divided by 4 is 5. And we also know that 5 minus 3 is 2, so we're happy because everything checks out. On number 2, our first step is to combine together our like terms. So we have 5a minus 7a. And 5 minus 7 is negative 2. We end up getting negative 2a equals 4. So then the second step is just going to be to divide both sides by negative 2. That gives us a equals negative 2. You can also check this by substituting a equals negative 2 into both a's. And so when you do that, you end up getting 5 times negative 2 minus 7 times negative 2 equals 4, which gives you negative 10 plus 14 equals 4. We know that 4 equals 4, so we're happy on that. For this one, I recommend that you check your answer on quizzes and tests just to make sure it checks out. However, the checking, you'll notice, is actually a lot longer than solving the problem. So you might also just want to go back and double check your steps as you're solving it and make sure that you did those right. So for this section, we are going to do just one more example. And that is a word problem. So I'm going to let you, if you want, you can pause and copy it down, or you can I recommend that when you copy these down, you can abbreviate if you want to. It makes it go a little bit faster. Or if you just write at the top, this was on the solving two-step equations section, I'll keep these videos up all year long, so if you want to look back at it on the word problems, you can feel free to do that. So as with the previous word problems that I gave you, you are going to start by defining a variable. And for every word problem you get, even if you're not asked about it, like in future classes, your teacher might not ask you to do these 3 things, but your teacher will be looking for these 3 things. So I would recommend that you just always do them. So start by defining a variable, followed by writing an equation, and your last step is going to be to solve that equation. So first of all, my variable. So they tell us to rent a booth at the county fair. It costs $42 per day plus a one-time equipment fee of $85. Find the number of days Mr. Wong rented a booth if he paid a total of $337. So words like find or tell the number or something like anything like that is going to be a signal that that's what you're looking for, and that's what your variable is going to be. So for your variable, you can call it x, you can call it n. I like using something like d, because that'll tell me, okay, d is days, so that's a little bit helpful. Also, be very specific. If you just put d equals days, that doesn't really mean as much as putting d equals number of days. And if you want to be really awesome and be extremely specific, you could say number of days Mr. Wong rented a booth. If on your quiz or test you put just days, you'll probably get half credit. If you put number of days, you'll get full credit. If you put number of days Mr. Wong rented a booth, you'll get full credit and you'll make your teacher happy. So just be as specific as you possibly can. Our next step is to write an equation. This is by far the most complicated part of it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start with trying to figure out if there's any total. About probably 3/4 of the time, looking for totals is going to help you write these equations. The reason is because we know that things are going to total up to something, that they're going to equal that. So they tell us right here that he paid a total of $337. So you can start by writing equals $337. So then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at everything else we have. So they tell us two important things. The first important thing is that it is $42 per day. The second important thing is that it's a one-time fee of $85. The fact that it's one time is very important. So now we need to figure out, first of all, make sure that those numbers are going to be used. They're both money that he's going to have to pay, so we have to use both of them in this equation. The second thing is we need to figure out which of those is going to go with our variable d. So the 42, they tell us 42 per day. So that means the 42 is going to be multiplied by the number of days. For the 85, it's a one-time fee. That means it does not matter how many days it is. So then we're going to write that as 42d plus 85, and we get that that equals 337. So if you get this far when you're doing these problems, you will get at least 2 out of 3 points, which is pretty good. However, I want you to get 3 out of 3 points, so we're going to go ahead and solve the entire problem. So solve the entire problem. So I'll rewrite it for you. You're going to start by subtracting 85 from both sides. So when you do that, you will end up getting, on your left side, you're still going to have a 42d. 85 minus 85 is 0, so we're going to cross that out. We don't need it. It's canceled out. And then 337 minus 85 is going to be 252. And for this, I'm actually going to ask that you don't use a calculator. If you want, you can work it out on the side. For many people, that makes it easier. So if you need to do this on the side, just to tell yourself, okay, we're going to carry a 1 over, and actually it's not carrying, but it's borrowing. So we're going to borrow from the 3. Then you can do that. That's totally fine. Don't erase that when you're done. Just keep it on the side. You can work in the margins on that. So it helps me to see, oh, she's actually doing the work. She's not just letting her calculator think for her. So if you do that, that's totally okay. So then our last step is to divide both sides by 42. And when you do that, you will end up getting d equals 6. So if you put d equals 6 on a test or quiz, you'll make me very happy, but not happy enough to give you 3 out of 3 points on this problem. The reason is because you are missing the units. And you can find that by looking back at what does D represent. So D is number of days. So we know that it's going to be 6 days. And that's my answer.